What's up, everyone? April here. We're going to get festive and hands-on. We're going to see how we can use Copilot in the Power Platform to build a Secret Santa application. I'll walk you through how to build this all in real time, so we'll see what works, what doesn't, and how to get a working application for Secret Santa out of the Power Platform and Copilot. So let's get started. Now let's think through what we need for a Secret Santa application. At its core, it's relatively simple. We need a way for people to go in and register for a Secret Santa exchange. Now to make this scalable, we probably want a way for an admin to go in and add multiple gift exchanges. So say if you're rolling this out for a company and each team wants to have their own individual Secret Santa gift exchanges, you might need a table or a database to be able to store that exchange information. And then really the last mechanism that we need is a way to randomly pair people for the Secret Santa. And there's some bells and whistles that we could add here if we wanted to be able to allow people to curate a wish list of items they'd like to receive. Let's focus on the basics here though and see if we can get something working with the Power Platform and Copilot. So most of what we'll be needing here is a Power App that users can interface with to be able to sign up and see who they're paired with. So let's go over to Power Apps and see if we can have Power Apps Copilot help us get started. In our Copilot window, I'm going to start simple. I'm going to say create an app to manage Secret Santa. And let's see if it even recognizes the concept of a Secret Santa gift exchange. And it looks like it did. So it's recommended that I have a column for participant name, their email, a gift ideas column, and an assigned to column. That's a pretty good start. Now this may not be ultimately what we decide to go with structure-wise, but this is a good start to get a base application up and going. So one of the things that you'll notice with Copilot right now is it's not able to allow us in the first iteration here to create an application which has multiple tables. Because if I'm thinking through as an experienced app developer of my preferred structure data-wise for this information, I would want one table for exchanges, I'd want another table for participants, and if we did go the whole gift ideas wish list route, I would want that information in a separate table as well, and I would associate all of those with lookup columns in Dataverse, or SharePoint, or whatever data source you're using. But when we use Copilot, we get this data automatically added into Dataverse. So structure-wise, that's how I would prefer it to be. But with Copilot, we have to start somewhere. So since it can't do those multi-tables right off the bat in the lookups, we'll start by having it create this initial list, and then we'll go add our other related list and do the lookups manually. The structure that it's recommending me here is really what I want to be my participants list. So I'm going to ask Copilot to help me here and see if it can rename the table to Secret Santa Participants. Great. So now that's clarified that. And one thing I see that's missing here is a shipping address. We might want to allow for virtual gift exchanges, and in that case, we'll need to know where to ship it to. So I'm going to ask Copilot to help me again here by saying add a column for shipping address. So it looks like it updated the table, and when it does, you'll see that it does give us some sample data here. This is really helpful when we get to the next step of having it actually create an initial app for us so we can see what the app will look like. So at this point, I'm fairly comfortable with the Secret Santa participants list here, so I'm going to go ahead and have it create the app. So we see it's loading up the app here, and what it's going to give us is a responsive template that's going to allow us to manipulate this list that it created for us, but we can go and tweak this as we move along to add the additional bits and pieces that we want for our Secret Santa application. So now if I press skip, we see if we look in the data source tab over here, it's automatically added that Dataverse table that it created for us here. And then if we look at the structure, we have a responsive layout. So it's utilizing something called containers. Containers are just a way for us to group controls so they can respond accordingly and work natively in mobile, tablet, or desktop. So this is allowing us to have a top row for the header and a bottom row for the content of the app. And within this bottom row body container, we have three other containers, one for this sidebar content and one for the right bar. And if we expand each of these out, you see that in the sidebar is where we have a gallery that is actually pointing to our data source that we created with Copilot. And in the right container, we have a form control, which is also bound to that table. So it gives us kind of a fully functioning solution here where we can see all other participants We can click on each of these. It'll see the details for the participant in the right-hand side. It has built-in searching and the ability by clicking new for someone to sign up here. So if you were doing kind of a one-off Secret Santa and you didn't need the ability to be able to have multiple gift exchanges or any information about the exchange, and you just want a sign up, we have that built basically here utilizing Copilot. But let's take it a step further, like I said, and build out a more holistic application. So Copilot gave us part of what we need, but as I mentioned, we want some other underlying tables here to really build this out. So we can actually use Copilot to add on to what we have here. So I'm going to save what we have so far, and then I'm going to open up a new tab with Power Apps again. And this time I'm going to go to the Tables tab so we can see the Dataverse tables that we have. So if I scroll down here, we can actually see our Secret Santa participants table that we just created and all of the sample data that we have in it. So we can manipulate the table here if we need to add anything to it. But I want to go back here to the Tables tab and let's add that layer for the Exchanges table. So we can actually use Copilot for this as well. If you see this option on the left-hand side to describe the new table, we can ask Copilot to help us build this new Dataverse table. So I can say create a table to manage events, and we can be as descriptive here in the initial prompt as we want. So I can say call this table Secret Santa Exchanges, add a column for name, start date, end date. It might also be good to have a column for budget so we can set a standard budget for what the gift should be. Maybe even one for image. It could be cool in the app itself to have a corresponding image for that event. So we'll say image. And let's also add a type column. So I'll say type with in-person and virtual as options. So I'm going to see if I can create a choice value here. So when we're creating a Secret Santa gift exchange, we can choose if this is going to be in-person only or virtual. And then let's just do a notes. And that should be it. And hopefully if we're putting all of this detail up at front, that will reduce the back and forth that we have to have with Copilot to get the table that we're looking for. And that was really fast. So you see all the details that I put in. Here's my name column. We have start and end date. We have the budget. There's the image, the type with the values that I specified. That looks just about perfect. We can always tweak this later if we want to. So let's just create this table here. All right, now we have our table again with that sample data, which is really important for testing to be able to see if this is working right. So now that we have the event layer, we can go back to the table that we created with Copilot initially. So let's go to tables and we'll go to Secret Santa participants. And this is where we want to build in that relationship that I talked about. So one participant could sign up to maybe more than one gift exchanges. Maybe there's different teams and they want to sign up for an in-person one and a virtual one for different teams. Who knows what it might be, but we can add this relationship here in the participants table. If we look all the way to the right, we have a plus button, and this lets us add a new column in this table. So we can give our column a name. So I'm going to say exchange. And now here's the key to making this a relationship with the exchange table. In the data type, we're going to select this dropdown, and we'll choose this option for lookup. And then you'll choose the other expanded option here for lookup. Now this other dropdown will show up for related table, and we simply go through this and we search for our exchanges table that we just created in the previous step. So here's our exchanges, and now we just click save. So now we've successfully created that relationship between the exchange and then the people that are signing up for each exchange. Now let's go back over to our Power App and see how we can bring all this together. Because right now we only have this participants list and we need to add in the exchange information to this as well. So first thing that I'll do is go over to our data source tab and we'll add data and add in that new exchanges table. So I just search for exchanges, there it is, there's our Dataverse table. So I'll click that and load that into my app. Now we also made some changes to the participants table. So we need to go to that data source in the app and do a refresh so it gets that new column, that lookup column that we added. Now the next thing I need is basically a dupe of this page except to manage the exchanges themselves. So what I'm going to do is actually go over to the main screen one, and I'll click the three dots and there's a duplicate screen option. And then I'm going to do a little bit of renaming here. So this first one, I'm going to rename this to participants. And the new one that we just created from a copy of that, we're going to rename this to gift exchanges. Now, obviously this duplicate screen is pointing still to the participants list, so we need to rewire up the gallery and the form to point to the exchange list instead. So we're going to go over to the gallery And the items property of the gallery you see actually has some PowerFX code in it already to be able to allow for searching. So it's not just a quick selection from the dropdown to be able to change this data source. I want to keep all of this search functionality, so I'm just going to erase this piece here, which is what's pointing to the data source. And we'll simply point this to the exchanges table. And we have an error here, of course, and that's because the columns that we have in the search capability don't match the columns that are in this exchanges list. So we need to update these. This is just telling the search function which columns we want to allow the user to search through. So here we'll just let them search by the gift exchange name. So that got rid of that error. Now we see a few more errors have popped up here. So these little red X's mean there's an error somewhere. So if we just click on that, it should take us directly to where the error is. So this is just a matter of us rewiring some things since we duplicated this and we want to point it to a different table. So in this remove statement, again, we want to remove the reference to the Secret Santa participants and point that to the exchanges list. So this is in the errors function here. I'm going to remove that. And then finally, right here in this first function, so that should resolve errors there, which it did. Let's fix this form control as well because that is pointing falsely to the participants list. This is an easier fix. So in the data source, we'll select that drop down there and change that to our exchanges list. And then we'll have it replace all the data cards. So to get the updated columns from that list. So that's looking good. And you notice as soon as I fixed that and changed the data source reference there, it did resolve a lot of the other errors that we're seeing here. Looks like we have one remaining one, so we'll click on that and see what it is. And that's simply a name issue. So we don't have a column in our exchanges called participant name. So we'll do selected dot, and we just want to get the name of the exchange itself. Everything is looking good. The only thing left is this header right here. We don't want this to be called Secret Santa participants. This should be exchanges. So we'll replace again the Secret Santa participants from the data source info and point it to exchanges. Now that's looking pretty good. Now we have a way to be able to add new exchanges and edit those, and we have a way for participants to sign up. Now remember, in this participants table, we added that exchange lookup. So let's go back to this form control on the participants screen, and we'll go to edit fields, and we need to add that lookup column. So we'll simply go to add fields, and then there is our new exchange column that we added. And now we have a way to add that relationship to the particular exchange that someone's signing up for. So we have the bones for what we need here for our application, but we need to tie it all together. Now the next thing missing here is a way for a user to browse the exchanges screen that we have up right now, click on one of those exchanges and join that exchange. So one way we could do that is in this gallery, we could add a button that says join, and that simply takes the user to the new form of this participant screen with some information already filled out in the exchange lookup, and they just fill out their information, submit, and now they're registered. So let's take a look at how we could tie those two together. Now right now we're not focusing on looks at all. We're going to use what it gives us out of the box and just make it work for our needs. So look at the gallery, and before we get into adding that button to be able to allow someone to register, let's fix a few things because it looks like it's duplicating some information. We have the name of the exchange and we have the budget showing twice. That's not very helpful. So we're going to select the gallery and we're going to go edit the fields, and we want name and budget, but let's change the second budget duplicate to start date so we can show when this particular exchange starts. Now this is where we can go add the join button. Now before I go into adding any controls, there's a setting that I want to apply. If we go over to our settings for this application and then go to upcoming features, let's do a search for modern. There's some new functionality called modern controls, which are based off of Fluent UI and give us some updated controls that we can use that make our apps look better. I want to leverage some of those as I build out additional functionality in this app. So to do that, I need to enable this feature. So I'm going to toggle modern controls to on. So again, I have an item in that gallery selected. Now if I go to insert, we'll have a new tab here for modern, and I can add a new modern button. So for now, I'm just going to kind of drag it over here away from all of my text. And for the button, I'm going to change the name to register instead of saying button. And then for modern controls, we have different properties than we do for the normal out-of-the-box controls for Power Apps, so it will look a little bit different. You don't have a one-to-one parity of properties that we can define for these modern controls. And that is kind of by design so that you stay within the Fluent UI look and feel. But if we go to the type option, this does give us some functionality to change the look of the button. The default's primary, which is this nice bold blue that you're seeing, or The color can change depending on the theme that you have set in the app. We also have secondary. We have outline, which is just, again, a different look and feel. We have subtle, which in our case is kind of blending in right now, so I wouldn't suggest that for this current look. And then we have transparent. So I'm actually going to go with the primary. We'll just keep that look and feel. And now with this button click, this is where I need to be able to go tell the user to go to that other screen and sign up there. So with my button selected, we'll go to the properties drop down and we'll go to the on select property. And here, let's start typing navigate, which allows us to move between screens in our application. And we're going to go to our participant screen. So within the navigate function, if you do a comma after the screen that you want to navigate to, you can choose a screen transition. And then if you do another comma, you can actually pass in parameters. And as I do that, you can see it's actually showing me the context variables that we have within the app. So one of the ones that's being used on our participant screen is called new form. And that's to tell the form control on our participant screen what mode it should be in. And that's a variable I want to set when I'm passing the user to that screen. So I'll select this variable, and then I want to set that to true. It's a Boolean value, true or false. So I'll set that to true. And this will route the user to the screen. So if we were to play this out, I'm looking at these different gift exchanges. I'm interested in this exchange number 1. I click register. It takes me here to the screen, and this is a new form where I can start typing and registering. Now the thing missing here though is that relationship that we talked about. What I want to have happen when they click register is it to automatically fill in this exchange dropdown with exchange 1 since that's what I selected. So we need to pass in an additional context variable to be able to do that. So we'll go back to the gift exchanges screen and back to our register button. And here in our navigate function, we'll define a brand new variable here. So we're going to call this one selected exchange. And then we'll just point it to this item, which gets the selected item in the gallery that we're on right now. And that'll get the record value for the item so that we can pass that into our lookup control. Now that we have that, we can go back to our participant screen, and now we have to wire this up. So we have to look at this exchange field. And right now we can't make any changes to this because by default, these cards, they're called, in the form control are locked. So we got to select the form control, go to advanced, and then click the unlocked button so we can make some changes. Now with the card selected, I want to go to the properties dropdown and select the default property. So we need to add some PowerFX code here to dynamically check if this is a new form. Then we want to get in that variable that we're passing. Otherwise, still use the this item.exchange value that's in there right now. So here we'll say if form mode.new. So if it's a new form, then I want to use that variable that I'm passing in. So we'll do the selected exchange, and then we'll do a comma, and then we'll say if it's not that, if it's a display form or an edit form, then we want to show the this item exchange value. So that right there should do it. So let's do a complete test here. We'll go back to our gift exchanges. We'll do a different one this time. We'll select exchange 5, click register, and there you go. It's automatically populated that value with exchange 5 for us. So we have a way to add new exchanges for users to see the exchanges that are available and register for those. The last fundamental piece is to be able to have a way for someone to press a button and have it automatically shuffle through and pair people with their Secret Santa. And this right here is really the most difficult part of building the whole application, and that's the PowerFX code that we need to be able to do this shuffling and unique pairing. Now I will say before attempting this video, I did try to use Copilot to see if it could help me write the formulas that I needed to do this. And unfortunately, it wasn't super helpful in getting me what I needed to be able to make this happen. But I do have no doubt that eventually Copilot will get there where it can help us craft elegant PowerFX code. But for now, we still need our PowerFX chops to make this happen. I've actually already written all the PowerFX code that we need to be able to do this pairing, and I'll walk you through how I did it. Now the first thing that we're going to do though is add a button on this screen so that for selected exchange, someone can click it and do the shuffling and the pairing. So let's select this header record container, and we'll go to insert, and we'll look through these different icons to see if there's one that gets what we need. For lack of a better icon right now, I'm going to use the send icon, and that's what we'll know to click to be able to do the pairing. We can always upload custom icons or even leverage a button, but for now, this will work. It's a little big, so let's size this down a bit to match the other icons. And now we can add in our logic. On the button, we'll go navigate to the onSelect property, and I'll paste in what I've written and explain it step by step. Now, what I did is just my best guess interpretation on how to handle this. If you're watching and you have a better way, I'd love to hear it. Drop a note in the comments. But what I've decided to do is leverage collections. So the first thing that I'm doing here is I'm using a clear collect and creating a new collection called participants shuffle. And then I'm using a power effects function called shuffle, which allows us to randomly reorder a particular list or data source. So you just point it to your data source, which I want to point it to my list of participants that we have inside of Dataverse that Copilot created for us. But then I want to have a filtered version of that. So this is only for a selected exchange. And remember, people can sign up for multiple exchanges. So I'm going to filter this participants list to the selected exchange name. So we're going to say filter that where exchange name equals this gallery.selected name. So that will give me a random shuffled version of that list. Now that I have that, I need to be able to uniquely compare a list of receivers with a list of givers. And to do that comparison and make sure that the items are unique and we're not matching a person to themselves or someone that's already been matched, we really need a unique ID for each of these different collections. So what I'm going to do is leverage a function called forAll, which allows us to loop through a collection of items. So I'll forAll through that participants shuffle collection that we just created in the function above. Then I'm going to create a new collection using collect called gifters collection. Now for this one, I'm only going to store the person's email address. So I'm creating a column called email, and then I'm going to create a new column called order. And in this order column, I'm going to create a unique ID that's automatically iterated by doing a count rows of the collection and appending 1. So now I'll have a collection of just people's emails with a unique number. So hopefully you're tracking and not confused yet, because the next step is to create a unique collection of receivers. So what we'll do in this one is use another forAll, but this time we're going to forAll through that gifters collection that we just created. And then as we iterate through each one of those, we'll add an item to a new collection called receivers collection. We'll also store the person's email in here. So what we're trying to do here is make sure the numbers don't line up. So in the order column here, we have an if statement, and we're checking to see if the gifter's order is equal to the total number of rows in the collection. So what this is saying is this current item the last row in the collection? Because if it is, then I want that number in my receivers collection to be 1. But if it's not, otherwise we're going to increment by 1. So as it's going through the list and it's in item 1 in our gifters list, it's going to append a 1 to that. So the first item in this will be 2, and so on and so forth until it gets to the last one, and that'll make that 1, so that there's never an item that lines up exactly. Now, if we keep scrolling down, the next thing I have here is a clear collect. This is just ordering the receivers collection by the order number ascending. Now we have 2 unique lists, so we can properly match those up to get our unique Secret Santa pairings. The only thing left is to put that information in our data source. So if we recall back when we first used Copilot to create our initial list, it created this Secret Santa participants list for us. And one of the columns included in that was an assigned to column. So this is meant for the person that's registered to hold the person that they're supposed to buy a gift for Secret Santa. So this is what we want to fill out. So if we look at this last function that we have here, we're doing a final forAll to loop through the gifters collection. And we're going to do a patch to write to our participants Dataverse list. And we're going to do a lookup to make sure that we're writing to the correct item. So we're going to look up the current gifter's email to the email in the list and make sure that it's for the correct exchange. So we're going to take the exchange.name and make sure it matches with the selected exchange that we have in the gallery there. And then finally, we just do the patch. We only need to patch the assigned to column, and we're going to do a lookup to the receivers collection to get the unique person. We're going to say where the order equals the current order that we have in the gifters collection. Because remember, we did that function earlier to make sure that the numbers don't line up and are unique. And now that will write the data to the list. So at that point, it's up to us to determine how we want to notify users that they've been matched. We can rely on them to go into the app and look to see what's filled out in the assigned to field, or we can leverage something like Power Automate or even the Outlook connector built into Power Apps to automatically send those notifications of who they're assigned to once we click the button. So if we wanted to do this all through the app, we could go into our Data Sources tab, add data, and search for Outlook, and use the Office 365 Outlook connector or whatever connector you want to use to send email, and we'll add that into our app. And since we already have this for all, where we're doing this looping, we can do our patch and then do a comma, and we can call the Office 365 Outlook connector here. And we can say send an email, and for the who to send it to, or take the gifter's email, we'll just hard code a subject here. And then finally for the body, we can just keep it simple. We can say you have been paired with, and then we'll pass in the person's name here. So we'll take this same lookup, and we can make this more elegant. We can use a with, so we're not doing double lookups, but just trying to get the point across here. And that will send a simple email. So before we test this all out, I'm going to make the gift exchanges screen the first screen that shows up here. So I just went to the three dots and I moved it up to the very top. So the idea would be that a user would come in, see all of the exchanges that there are, and click the register button to sign up, and that would navigate them to the participants page with a new form where they can register. Now there's some additional security things we might want to do here, or you probably actually do want to do before you implement this. You probably don't want everyone in your company to be able to do the drawings, only the administrators of the exchange. So we can add an additional layer here if we'd like. We could go back into Dataverse, into our tables tab here, and we could add another simple table. So we can say describe a new table here, create a table to track admins for an app. We'll see what it can do there. Cool, that's good enough, because really all we're trying to get is where we can put someone's name, email, and their role, if they're an admin or just a user. So we'll create this. So now that we have it, we can go back into our app in our data sources, add data, search for admins. There's our new list. So now that we have this, we can do some logic here on the loading of the screen. So if we select this gift exchanges screen and go to the on visible property, we can use a variable here. So we can say update context, and I'll just create a variable called isAdmin. And in here, I'm going to do a lookup to that admin's table. So we're going to say if email equals, and we'll use a function called user, which gets the context of the current logged in user, and I can get their email address. And that will compare to see if the current logged in user exists as an admin in that table. Now, once we have that, we can go into the button or the object that we're wanting to lock down. And on the visible property, we can put a not blank is admin. So if I'm in the list, it'll show. If I'm not, it won't show. So not everyone can be able to click that button. And we can do that throughout the app wherever needed, that same pattern. Now, as I said, we're not focusing on the design here. There's a lot we can do from a design standpoint. Some easy, quick wins that we could do is simply change this header from blue to maybe a Christmassy green. So we can do that on each screen here really quick. So we're going to select that object, and in the properties panel on the right-hand side, we'll select the color bucket here and simply choose the new color we want. Another thing that I like to do as well is to set background images for my screens. So if we select on any one of these screens, in the properties pane, you'll see a background image option, and you can upload an image file, which I've already did here, and I have that set here. Now it's not showing because these containers have different colors associated with them. So if I look at screen container 1 here, and I go to the color property, click that drop down bucket, click that paint bucket there, and go to custom, you'll see that this is a white color, but I can make it transparent so that background kind of peeks through. So now we can see there is our little Christmassy background peeking through there. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing with this container as well. And there you go, it's already looking a little bit more Christmassy. Now another thing that we'll want to do to finish this out is fix this register button, because right now it's not telling the difference between if someone's already registered or not. So we need to make this dynamically changed to where if they haven't registered, it takes them to the new form like we already have wired up, or if they have registered, it shows them their existing registration. So to do that, you can see this function that I've added. If we go to the registers on select, I'm using a function in PowerFX called with, because it needs to do a lookup into the participants Dataverse table to see if the current logged in user has a record in there for the selected exchange. So I'm doing the lookup and I'm defining that to a quote unquote variable within the with function so that I can use that to check if that's blank. And if it is blank, we're going to navigate to the new item as expected. If it's not blank, meaning they do exist, then we're going to still navigate to that participants list, but instead of setting the new form mode to true, we're going to let it know that an item is selected with the isSelected variable, and we're going to set the current item to the lookup that we defined here, so it filters it to that record. Now the last thing to do is to take this kind of same with function here and dynamically change the text of the button. So in the properties dropdown, if we go to the text, right now it says register. We'll paste in that with, so we'll see if they exist in there, and we'll do an is blank. So if they don't exist, we want it to say register. If they do exist, we want it to say view registration maybe. So we might need to make the button a little bit bigger so it doesn't slide off, but now you see that it's automatically working because I did sign up for Exchange 5. So it's showing view registration, and then for the other ones, it's showing register. So if I were to click on this one here, it's a new form. But if I go back and click on the one that I've already registered for, then it's showing my information. And you know, I just realized we never really test to see if that random assignment actually works. So let's click the button that we worked on earlier and see if it assigns people. Moment of truth right here, the hardest part of the whole app. So it looks like it's taking a little bit doing those pairings. So if it did work, we should see that in our Dataverse table, but we should also see it in our participants list as well. So we can see it looks like it did work because here is my record for what I signed up for, and here's who I'm assigned. And if I peek at some of the other ones, it looks like it has unique items for everyone in the list. So it's working great. Those are really the building blocks and the basics for what you need to get a Secret Santa app up and going. There's so much more you can do, of course. You can make it look better and keep tweaking the UI. We can add some AI functionality to the app itself. So maybe we can get AI suggestions for gifts with Azure OpenAI integration. The possibilities are really endless here, but hopefully this gave you some ideas of how you could leverage Power Platform and Copilot to start building a Secret Santa solution, and I look forward to seeing what you build.